Welcome to the next video in our series on how to choose the best one-bag travel backpack for you. In this video, we'll break down a travel backpack's form, including the bag weight and size. We're big fans of carry-on only, and we think it's such a better way to travel if you don't have to check your bags. We're gonna take a look at weather resistance and how to protect your gear from the elements. We're also gonna take a look at durability and quality, including what kind of zippers to look out for and what types of fabrics to consider when you're searching for a pack. So let's jump right into it. So for bag weight and size, we really prefer carry-on, and this is going to vary based on different airlines. Everybody has different rules and they allow you to carry different weight and different dimensions. A good resource for this is carryonbagsizes.com, and they kind of break down every single airline and the weight that you're allowed on each, and we found it to be a pretty good resource. It's pretty well updated and it'll give you an idea on if you're able to travel with your bag or not on specific airlines. It's easy to get caught up and hung up on all this liter talk when it comes to backpacks, but the truth is there's really no industry standard and it can be inaccurate from brand to brand. So a couple things to look out for, one being the fabric that it's made out of. So, if it's a thicker fabric, and you're not gonna be able to fit quite as much in there. And when it does come to top-loading backpacks as well, it's important to consider what the company means when they say the volume. So maybe the marketing team at the company can say that a bag is 40 liters, but that's only when the pack is cinched to the top. But then when it's cinched down to the bottom, maybe it becomes 34 liters because you're losing all that extra space when it's cinched down. Another thing to consider is that if your bag is a weird shape, if it's some kind of trapezoid, it's going to be a little bit harder to stuff full. And although we don't necessarily recommend rectangular packs, sometimes that can come with a bit of an aesthetic penalty, you're going to be able to fit a lot more in there. So if you're looking for a really high capacity, you may generally want to look for more boxy backpacks that'll allow you to fit more. And again, that efficient use of space and that true volume can really make or break the functionality of a pack when you're on the road. Pack profile is another consideration that a lot of people don't consider or talk about. And when we say pack profile, we're talking about how thin a backpack fits onto your back. So if it's thinner to your back, it's generally going to be a better center of gravity as it's going to be more with you. But if it hangs out quite a bit out the back, it's going to feel heavier and it's going to be harder to carry around. With pack profile, it's also kind of a consideration thing. So if you're getting onto a plane or getting onto a bus, you yourself take up less space and you're not going to be hitting people in the face with your backpack as you're kind of turning around. Another thing we want to take a look at is top loading versus panel loading backpacks, otherwise known as clamshell. And basically what it is for top loading, it's a flap that opens up and you're able to stuff a bunch of things inside. It's basically a giant bucket. And then a clamshell bag is gonna function more like your traditional suitcase. So it's gonna open up all the way. You're gonna be able to have access on everything inside of it, and you're gonna be able to easier organize your pack. Now there's some pros and cons of each one of those styles for travel. The pro of a top loader is that there's less that can go wrong. So you don't have a zipper going around the entirety of your pack that if it breaks, you're kind of screwed. But with a top loader, you don't really have that issue since it's just basically a flap that's gonna fold down. And with the top loader, since you are lacking some of that access, you're probably gonna wanna get some packing cubes or other types of organizers for your bag so you can kind of group up different items, because you don't wanna be going to the bottom of your top loader pack every time you're grabbing, some toothpaste. So for a consideration, we found the Wandered Provoke to be interesting when it comes to a clamshell or a top loader. This pack actually does both. It is a top loader and it also has a bit of a larger zippered compartment where you can lay it out clamshell. So this is a kind of interesting pack that doesn't force you to choose between one or the other. Weather resistance is another key thing to consider when you're taking a look at one bag travel backpacks. On one hand, you want to be able to survive a light rain, maybe even a monsoon for 20 minutes if you're traveling around Southeast Asia with the setup that you have. But on the other hand, usually with urban travel and this type of more city travel, you don't really need something that's waterproof unless you want to go diving with your MacBook Pro in the back of your laptop compartment. There's really no need for all that extra waterproof tech, whether it's a water resistant coating on the fabric that kind of helps keep the water out, whether it's a fancy material that kind of additionally keeps water out, or whether it's a zipper with like an aqua guard on it or a water resistant zipper. All that stuff can really kind of help pull together and create a more weather resistant pack. But again, you probably don't need it. So with all this talk on water resistance, if you do have a couple of pieces that you really want to stay waterproof with, maybe your phone, maybe your passport, some important documents, your money, consider getting another type of container that you can put inside of your backpack as a fail-safe. So for instance, if we take a look at the DACA Magpul pouches, those are almost waterproof. They are highly water resistant and they do work. If they're zipped up correctly, they are submergible and no water gets inside. However, it's not a completely submergible solution. You can't go diving with it. But if you do have that inside of your bag and your bag falls off a boat, likely when it's in the water, that stuff is gonna stay dry, or at least stay dry enough for you to use it and for you to salvage it, even if your clothing in your bag isn't completely dry. Whether you're traveling for a week, a month, or a year, it's important to consider the durability and quality of your backpack. You don't want something to break, as you're basically going to be living out of that thing for the extent that you're traveling. It's also good to have something that can last for multiple years and you can just get more use out of it in general. Spend a little bit more on the first run and then end up buying less in the long run if you have something that's of higher quality. It's hard to tell if a bag is going to be durable right out of the box, but we do try to test bags for as long as we can before giving them a review. So there are a couple of key considerations with the materials and the zippers to take a look at when you're trying to find a high quality pack. So starting with the zippers, which are especially important on clamshell bags, you want to take a look for high quality zippers. And YKK is a very popular Japanese brand that a lot of high quality bag manufacturers and designers use for their bags. And they don't try to mess around in building their own zippers. They just stick a YKK on there and it's normally good to go because YKK makes such high quality. So how do you look out for that? There are a couple different ways. Sometimes you'll see YKK on the zipper pulls. Start looking at something around you. If you do have a higher quality garment, like Patagonia will use them in their jackets. Some backpacks will use them on their bags. Even some pants will use YKK zippers, and having that YKK little brand of approval on there is kind of a way to let consumers know that that zipper is of high quality and the manufacturer didn't cheap out. YKK has a bunch of different weights. So a number 10 zipper is gonna be really big and fat. Maybe that's on the main clamshell of the bag. It's important to have that strong, thick zipper there that's going to hold all your stuff together. And then inside you may see zippers of lower numbers or lower weights, maybe a YKK4 on a pocket that is on the interior of your pack that is gonna hold less stuff, bear less of a load, and just generally it's not as big of a deal if a smaller zipper inside your pack breaks versus the main clamshell. So be on the lookout for that and the types of weights that companies do use. There's a couple ways to take a look at this. Sometimes the company will list it on their website and their specs if they're like really hardcore into bags and they know that their market really cares about this stuff. Sometimes, but not always, you can see the YKK brand on the zippers as well as the number and the weight that it is. But just note that you can't always tell. The GoRuck GR2 is an example of a pack that really puts durability first. And when the bag is empty, it weighs 4.75 pounds, which is pretty heavy, but they just have these heavy duty YKK zippers on it. It's made of 1000D cordura fabric, and it's reinforced in so many different places. The durability is totally out of control. And that's the backpack that I traveled with for a little bit over a year, and I did really like it. But there's an example of a company and a bag that's super strong, super durable, and doesn't mess around with cheap zippers. There are a ton of different backpack fabric and materials out there that are used, and oftentimes you'll see them described with a number followed by an uppercase D. And what that D stands for is denier.
The D in 1000D refers to denier, probably the most talked about stat. It's a unit of measurement for the weight of yarn, but shouldn't be used as an indication of strength. How denier is measured is a little convoluted. It is in the weight of grams of 9,000 meters of yarn. So 1000D would weigh 1,000 grams for a 9,000 meter length. In turn, 500D would weigh 500 grams.
So starting with ripstop nylon is a pretty thin and kind of swishy material. It sort of feels like a windbreaker. So the Patagonia Alpine Houdini, for instance, is made of ripstop nylon. A lot of bag companies use them as a kind of great liner for their products. And basically what ripstop nylon means, it's pretty close to nylon, but the ripstop element comes from the specific weave of the fabric. So there is a square weave that's going to stop any additional rips from happening. So if you rip traditional nylon, it may continue to rip, but if you rip ripstop nylon, it's gonna stop at those individual square grid points. And it's currently used in ejector seats for fighter pilots. So it's definitely a pretty badass fabric. Ballistic nylon refers to any fabric that has a ballistic weave, which is actually pretty similar to a common basket weave. This gives it an excellent tensile and tear strength, especially when layered, but also makes it heavier than a lot of other materials. So keep in mind that ballistic nylon is usually black. And why is it called ballistic? It was used by airmen in World War II to help protect them from shrapnel and other things flying around. Cordura nylon is a very thick and popular strong nylon that's used on bags today. It usually does require some durable water repellent coating to help keep that additional water outside of the fabric. A lot of companies end up using Cordura for their bags because it has some of the best abrasion resistance out there for the weight. Sure, there are more durable materials, but again, those are gonna weigh a lot more, and Cordura has a very good weight to protection ratio. Cordura is often used in a lot of protective motorcycle equipment because it's very abrasion resistant, and if somebody ends up taking a spill on their motorcycle, it's gonna protect them pretty decently, without making them look very stiff in the process. So it does have that great amount of flexibility. And you'll always see a registered trademark next to Cordura because it's an actual company that creates this blend of nylon. Kodra nylon is basically the same as Cordura, but it comes from Korea. Same kind of concept. Sailcloth lately has become a little bit more popular for some bag manufacturers because of its high water resistance and its thinner overall material. The actual material is called ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, but most know it as sailcloth. It's basically the same material used for the sail of a sailboat. Pretty easy to understand. It's a relatively rare material for backpacks, but brands like Tortuga have taken advantage of it for their bags. The Tortuga home base uses it, and it's a very thin cloth that doesn't require much liner, and it still has some pretty high water resistance. However, it does have some drawbacks. It's a little bit crinkly, it's a tad bit shiny, and also it's not super flexible. So if you're trying to jam your bag shut, trying to stretch it out a little bit, it's not really gonna work. And it does definitely get some aesthetic blemishes on it. It's not quite as abrasion resistant as something like Cordura. Dyneema is another fabric that works really well for backpacks, and it's going to be more expensive than nylon, but it's also going to be lighter. The makers of Dyneema claim that it's 15 times stronger than steel, although we haven't had the opportunity to test that specifically. It is a very strong fabric, and it's important to note that nylon is going to be a little bit more flexible than Dyneema. Dyneema is going to be a little bit harder to jam a bunch of stuff inside of your pack. It's going to be a little bit less forgiving than nylon, but traditionally it will be lighter and it will be thinner, so you will have that extra space to start with. It's also a little bit more expensive than nylon, so just keep that in mind. If you do see a Dyneema bag and you're wondering why it is more expensive than, say, a traditional nylon bag, well, that's why, because they opted for stronger materials. These materials are great and all, but again, it only matters how the bag manufacturer puts them together. So again, try to find a reputable brand that has a good track record, and you're gonna be happy with your backpack purchase. And also take a look for warranties. The best bag companies have the best warranties because they make the most durable stuff that doesn't break. They can afford to put their stamp on something and guarantee it if they're not receiving a lot of bags back from consumers because they don't like them or something broke on it. So if you take a look at GoRuck and their Scars warranty, they really stand behind their packs. If something does go wrong, you just send it in, they'll fix it, usually for free. Companies like Patagonia that have a more ethical stance on production also stand behind their products with their ironclad guarantee. So if something breaks, no matter how old it is, you can either send it in for replacement or repair, depending on the state that it's in. And it's either free or they have a little bit of cost associated with it, depending on how the damage was done. Thanks for taking a look at this video in the How to Choose the Best One Bag Travel Backpack for You series. Stay tuned for the next one.